Right, so Richard, I watched your campaign video, right? So I think the obvious question is working class roots. That seems to be the party line at the minute. Is it just a soundbite?
I'm not sure it's a party line, and it's certainly not the soundbite. When we were thinking about the narrative, both visual and the words to go along with the video, we wanted to get across the journey I've been on personally, rather than politically, and the view was that the best place to start is where my life started, and that journey tells that story reflects the journey I've been on personally, and then professionally. So certainly not a party line, but I think the important part of that narrative about the start of my life and where I came from, well, that is very important because my politics, come from that place, and my views on the need for social justice, fairness, equality of opportunity, and ensuring that people from all backgrounds have the best opportunities available to make the success of their lives comes from that place.
Yeah.
And the place I came from was ridden by inequality, social injustice, and unfairness, and very, very few opportunities are available from people from my background. And indeed, Labour's current Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones, who was the MP in the part of Bristol I came from, went to the same secondary school as myself. And on a recent interview in The Spectator, he talked about that school being not one of the worst in Bristol, but one of the worst in the country. So, so that bit about that narrative about my background was really part of telling the story about myself, and not trying to do it in a really overt way, but it's very important.
Well, it's important to mention, absolutely, because that's the thing that people are so certainly in this region, right? The thing that people are most disgruntled by is that politicians seem to be in a league of their own, and we're never going to bump into them, and we're not those people, and so why are they talking for us? So I think that makes a lot of sense as to why. That's the narrative that was in the narrative.
And my mum still lives in that place. I still have friends, in that place I grew up on. And as I said, it informs, my views about how we want to do better for young people, all of our people in this region, and why those with most disadvantage we need to invest in them to make and help ensure they make the most of the opportunities available to them. So.
Fair, that's fair. I appreciate you clarifying that. So you go from the working class roots. You do all the right things, right? You studied hard. You went to university. You got a good degree, and then you start arguably one of the largest businesses in the world with in terms of PwC. And you've worked your way up over what was it, nearly a 27-year career. How does somebody go from? I mean, you completed it, right? You did. I've got to partner at PwC. There's really not much further I need to go in my career for somebody who's coming from this background. Why then go? I'm going into politics.
Yeah. So again, the politics. So throughout my, I've been a member, a Labour Party member since I was a teenager. Politics has always been there in my life. It's always mattered to me, and in a democracy, it needs to matter, and it should matter, and it is one of the only ways we can make a difference. So politics has always been there. Although in pursuing a professional career, obviously there's not a great opportunity to campaigning, and that part of the life is put on the back burner a bit because businesses quite rightly are mostly apolitical. But my views and my values were always reflected in what I did at PwC. And in 2010, the head of PwC asked me to manage the firm's relationship with the Labour front bench. So for 5 years, between 2010 and 2015, I spent a good chunk of my week, a third of my week, working with the shadow cabinet, quite very closely, and I got to know people like Rachel Reeves, who's now the Shadow Chancellor, really well. We ran a secondment programme, and then in advance of the 2015 general election, I worked with a team of people that worked on Labour's preparations for office. If Labour had won, but we'd won in 2015 and we didn't. So that work got me closer to political decision makers and exposed me to senior people in the party and the process we need to go through. And I kept close to those people, in the following 5 or 6 year period.
You had a little in, didn't you?
Period, but I'm not sure about little. But those people that they start off as clients, they start become friends and allies and confidants. And I was in a position then where I use some of that insight and skills and expertise to put the combined authority together. So my last big project at PwC was putting this combined authority together, which wasn't about an overt political role, but it was about how to work with a set of leading politicians in this region, mostly the leaders of councils, to get them together. Sense of purpose and team, and the understanding of politics and the instincts, and certainly the learning that I got through that role working with the Labour front bench was incredibly helpful. So politics has always been there. I left PwC to do some other things that I wanted to do, working in a small business, helping other businesses, and it also gave me some more time to help politicians outside of our business. I've chaired for 5 or 6 years now something called the West Midlands Labour Finance and Industry Group. So I've chaired a business forum that has been a bridge between the Labour Party and the business community. So in some ways, the step I'm making has been, I won't say natural progression, because it's the first time I'm starting to campaign. But for those people who know me and know me best, they weren't necessarily that surprised that I decided to go.
It was always a case of when, not if.
Indeed. But I'm very, very lucky through my life. Through the education I've had and the career I've had, I've been able to have choices about what I do in my life. And that's probably the biggest privilege anyone can have in life. Most people don't have those choices. And my views on the way in which this region is falling behind other regions, my views on the fact that I don't believe our current mayor is prioritising the right issues for people across the region. My experience and insight and understanding about how important and effective regional governance could be under a different style of leadership and approach was ultimately my primary motivation for making this big thing. What I would say is what I'm doing now, I am learning a new profession, and it is probably the hardest thing I've done in my life. So it's certainly not been
it's not
indeed, absolutely.
Okay, that brings me on to, I had a handful of questions that our audience had sent in. So one of those lines in really well right now, right? So you talk about kind of your campaign pledges and things that the current mayor's not looking at. So the campaign pledges that I picked out seem to be kind of really the ones that you honed in on was abolishing low-paying jobs, rogue landlords and affordable housing, revitalising our high streets, and cheaper and controlled public transport. So why are those the things that you've gone, this is where the issues are?
So we've talked to lots of people around this region. We've critiqued the performance of this region and the current Tory mayor, and we've looked at the things within the powers of a mayor that can be changed for the better. So those drive those priorities, and those priorities were they've proved that their resilience and relevance in a number of ways. Firstly, they were the key themes in my initial selection, because I had to go through a selection process with the Labour Party to get here, and they've remained. We've remained core to the agenda today, and they stem from the fact that there are a number of major areas of responsibility for the mayor, in my view, that are not working effectively or in the right way for the people of this region. And I want to talk up this region, its potential, but you can only understand the gap that you need to bridge and the direction you truly need to go in and the pace at which you need to make change. You can only do that if you are honest about the challenges that we face today.
Okay.
And there are three things I will say that we need to address is an absolute priority. Of which
excuse my ignorance on this, but how does a mayor impact low-paying jobs? How do you change that?
Okay, so we'll start off with some context. This region is performing worse economically than any other region in the country. Okay, so
right. Okay.
A recent report by Demos, a think tank, and PwC, my old employers, they every year they produce a good growth index and do a report on this region. Sits one off the bottom of a league table of 16 devolved regions, yet 15th out of 16. Only the Tees Valley is performing worse on this good growth balance scorecard. And then just before the Christmas holiday period, the New Britain think tank produced a report on the performance of local authority places across the country. And we had, of all the local authorities nationally, we had 4 parts of this region performing in the top 15 worst. So this region has become, if you like, using largely their words rather than mine, the regional capital of broken Britain. Yep. Now, and when we look at what's underlying that poor economic performance, there is something around the challenges businesses face on the ground, in primarily smaller businesses, and I'll come back to that. But we've also got our current Tory mayor has failed to turn the dial on some of the most important social and economic metrics in this region. We have the highest proportion of people of working age not being economically active than any other region. We have, in some parts of this region, almost 24% of the people working with very low skills, or no skills at all. And people in that position are damned to a life, not just today, almost forever, of low pay. And they suffer all the anxieties and vulnerabilities that go with that. And then that's reflected in the fact that this region's performance is driven by those challenges. And it's reflected in the fact that we have our levels of productivity here trail national averages of between 12 and 14%, and that undermines the competitiveness of the region. So my priority and is to invest as much as we can, an absolute commitment to it, into skills, education and learning, particularly for young people, so that we can give them the best opportunity to access better jobs, better paid jobs. And when I talk to employers,
but that's not abolishing low-paid jobs, though, is it? That's because those low-paid jobs still exist. It's upskilling those doing those low-paid jobs into but somebody still needs to do those low-paid jobs.
Well, there will always be jobs that are lower paid than others, but my priority is to create as many higher paid jobs as we can in this region, and the only way we can do that is providing people the access to the skills that they need to access those jobs. At the moment,
but that's a very layered issue, right? Because what our children are learning in school is almost irrelevant in the real world. In the majority of Gen X and Gen Z that you speak to know nothing about how taxation works, know nothing about how the economy works, know nothing about how banking and overdrafts work. That's all things, and mortgages and so on and so forth. That's all things they learn when they leave the schooling system. They know how many wives Henry had. They know when the Battle of Hastings was, but they don't know anything that's kind of applicable to the real world. So how does a mayor impact those things?
So I don't have direct responsibility for the school system, but my priority, and I'm pleased it's a priority of the Labour Party and certainly Bridget Phillips and her team, is to make 16 to 18 education, an absolute priority. That is the point in the lives of young people when they start to truly learn those skills that are preparing them for the
completely
workforce.
agree with that. Yeah.
If I had resources, I would get more mentoring into schools to ensure the people that haven't got that support around them get it and understand what's possible. And we have to find a new way to inspire and motivate people and give them the aspirations they need to succeed, so they can truly come from any part of this region, and achieve, the very best for themselves. My primary, my area, one of my primary areas of focus is addressing those fault lines in our society that prevent people making the most of their lives simply because they're unable to access the opportunities that have got the prospect to making a difference. I don't believe there's any other way in the short, medium, long term we can improve the outcomes for people in this region or the prospects of people in this region unless we address the fault lines in the skills and learning system that doesn't provide them with what they need to make a success of their lives.
And when you've got policy being passed to tax low-income people who are supplementing their income by selling things on eBay and Vinted, and just trying to make a side hustle culture is what they call it. When the tax man's coming after those people and not the ones that are avoiding tax right at this side, I agree that the system needs to amend. But my concern, I suppose, is that it seems as though, and rightfully, you've identified that there is an issue with our region being a low-paid region. But fundamentally, how are you going to then drive investment to the Midlands region?
Okay. So, from discussions I had many years ago at PwC with senior politicians, it was always fascinating for me when we used to have board discussions and get politicians in. There was always a concern that amongst a number of us at PwC that we would get dragged into a debate about taxation. And I can tell you, those chief execs and chairs of those businesses primarily were concerned about skills. Could they access the skills they needed to build their businesses? So I'm not going to be complacent enough to say that, once we've driven or improve the skill system, that's the end of it. It's not. We've also got to work incredibly hard to ensure that we both attract businesses here and we build businesses here. So I want this region to be the best place to do business in the UK. And I'll say a bit about that because it is incredibly important. The current mayor has got something called the West Midlands Growth Company that is supported by the local authorities here and from the mayor's office. It is focused almost exclusively on inward investment. Now, inward investment is important, but I want it to change its focus. I want it to work with family businesses, with entrepreneurs, and with small and medium-sized enterprises across this region. So we help them grow and develop and succeed. So we build our economy from the bottom up and the inside out. So alongside this commitment to investing in skills and giving people, and particularly young people in this region, the best opportunity we can to succeed and make the most of their lives, I want the other institutions to work differently too. And one of them is the West Midlands Growth Company. And it needs to have relevance and resonance across the whole region the way that it doesn't have now. And look, we've got 350 or 360,000 small businesses across this region. Most of them would not know about the growth company, and most of them would be invisible to the growth company. We also need to look at ways in which we can improve the pace at which businesses that want to get to work here get the support that they need. So some of that is around training and skills. And I've met some businesses, some great tech businesses in the region recently that can't want to recruit 2,000 or 3,000 people over the next few years. There's not a college in the region training people in the skills they need. And when I talk to the principals of those colleges, they say the government doesn't give us enough money to run those courses. And we can't even run those courses if we had the money because the teachers and lecturers that we need are now going back into industry where they can get more money. So we need to address that fault line.
I accept that. However, just to challenge that a little bit, if you don't mind. Companies like, and there are alternatives, but School of Code exists, where it's set up by a individual or a group of people, companies that have come together that will train in tech, people who are later learners, nothing to do with government initiative, nothing, there's no financial backing provided. It's all done as from a business model, right? So is it that maybe the systems are outdated, right? Because if a business, I completely agree. If I want to grow my business regionally, and I want to hire 3,000 devs in Birmingham, that's going to be a tall order, or in the wider region of Birmingham, not just Birmingham. But we are also a global economy now. We have also gone, we went digital overnight during the pandemic, and we've very much proven that you don't need a localized workforce anymore. So, it really kind of, does that not almost fly in the face of the...
I don't think it does, because those businesses want to grow here and they're based here. And unless we can ensure they can access the skills here, they will go somewhere else. Yeah. So we need to ensure those businesses, can access the skills they need to grow and develop their businesses here. Otherwise, they're pretty footloose. They could go anywhere. So, and one of the ways in which you can make any region or place or city or borough competitive, attractive to businesses is having a workforce there that meets their needs. So that's the priority. We need to ensure those businesses and the people in those businesses have the support in place and the infrastructure they need to change. So, and whether that's a business wanting to relocate here from another region or outside the region, or even if there's a business in this region that needs a new site to grow and develop, we need to ensure that they're getting the support that they need. And we have a planning system that recognises that. And local authorities are under immense resource pressures at the moment, and and it's often the planning department that suffer as a part of that. And one of the things I will be doing when I sit down with the leaders of the councils again is just looking at a way in which, my office, if I'm mayor, can support local authorities with resources or additional support of expertise to ensure that we never lose an opportunity to help locate a business here or help it grow and develop, along a path that the path it needs as quickly as possible, simply because bureaucracy or public administration or planning isn't working in consult in the most aligned way.
Okay.
And lots of my discussions with businesses today have been how we can, and I'm not someone who wants to intervene in something and change it just for the sake of it, and I don't want to be a heavy-handed mayor. I want to spend my time removing some of the obstacles that prevent business working as effective it needs to in this region, and ensure it gets the help and support it needs to succeed.
Okay. On that then, we all accept small businesses are kind of the backbone of the economy, right? One of the questions that kept coming in was, what are your views on why were small business owners and contractors outside of R35, why were we left behind during the pandemic? We didn't get the support. There was no furlough for me. There was no support from the government. There was loans available that I have to pay back. No, there was no kind of it'll be okay. It was tough shit. My recruitment business overnight went from having 15 temps running out and like 20 vacancies in pipeline to absolutely zero. So why were we left behind in what's the Labour view on that? What's your view on that?
Yeah. So I'm not going to be an apologist for the failures of that the current government, or
nor should you be, right?
No, so, indeed. Yeah. Or the fact that they made they got some of their priorities wrong during that time, and they've left this region particularly has found it really, really hard to recover, simply because there are so many small and family-owned business here that struggled during that time and didn't get the support they need. I can't remedy those failures of the past, but what Labour is committed to do is supporting small businesses going in future. One of the one of the areas I think that is going to be incredibly helpful is the plans for a future reform of business rates, for example. And Johnny Reynolds, Labour's Shadow Business Secretary, has made commitments around that, and hopefully work will start as soon as Labour are elected about reforming that. And not only by the reform of business rates can we look at ways of relieving the burden on small businesses, which is a massive burden for many of them, but it'll be a very effective way also about renewing, regenerating, and giving new life to many of our high streets because they will become more viable. But there's more to Labour's plan than just business rates. The investments we want to make into the green economy and that green transition, and ensuring that we not just invest in skills and the end product, like a retrofitting product, but we also support the growth of businesses and supply chains to allow that to happen. Great opportunities for people and businesses in this region, to learn and develop new skills to succeed.
And it comes when you've got a workforce that's skilled enough to be able to cater for such a need.
Indeed. And if we do those things in the right way, we will also improve our energy security, and we'll see some of those bills coming down that are damaging. And with business, I went into a butcher's at the weekend. I was doing some cooking for some friends on Sunday, and he was telling me that his bills have gone up from £700 a month to £3,000. I mean, you think, how does a small business?
It's not sustainable.
It's and he asked me exactly the question. Richard, what would you be doing now? And part of my role as a mayor is not just to use those hard powers of mayor, where I've got some direct responsibilities for things. I've talked a bit about some of those already, but it is how to use the influence that you have with other key stakeholders, both across this region, but also in Westminster, so we start to get the best deal for this region. Now, what I also want to do for business and for businesses of all sizes is every 6 to 8 weeks take cohorts of business people in this region to spend half a day in Whitehall and Westminster, meeting some civil servants and then some politicians, so we can talk about the region, meet them face to face, so that we can have some of the conversations, so these people can start to have a better understanding of some of the challenges we face. So, and that is necessary in my view, because I think we're being left behind in this region. I talked about that already, and I think we need to promote this region a lot more effectively in those corridors of power. And I am concerned that there's a risk that having, an HS2 line that will do nothing for this region but travel from, Old Oak Common to furthest to Birmingham City Centre, there may be people in London who think we've had our transport settlement now, and that's going to be it for the next 10 years. And actually, HS2 will do nothing for this place, and it'll certainly do nothing for Coventry, given its line. So we need to take that message. There's something else I want to say about the approach, and this all hopefully fits together, is that we currently have a mayor who has a set of aims and objectives that, in my view, are almost independent and separate from the priorities of the people and places of this region. So I want my priorities to be built bottom up. I'm talking to community groups, I'm talking to businesses, I'm talking to council leaders, I'm talking to universities, I'm talking to folks who run FE colleges and community groups in the third sector, understanding what some of those priorities are and building our priorities for the region bottom up. So, and that's not me just being passive, so by saying all my priorities simply going to be an aggregation of everyone else's, but what I'm looking for is have some alignment, so there is a clear understanding about what we're seeking to do in this region, and there is the best possible fit with all those other institution agencies, because the only way we can lift this region out of the current situation that it's in, where it's fallen behind and failing, is if the key institutions are working collectively and collaboratively, very clearly on an agenda for change and transformation, and they are all working, singularly and collectively towards it. This is not. This can never simply be a mayoral project. It has to be a project about how we all work together to lift the West Midlands.
Understood. No, that's fair. And I mean, you clearly do believe it, but you genuinely believe that's possible. That level of collaborative effort.
I do. I've seen it already. So I've spent
in probably the destruction of the country, but not certainly not the.
But I've spent the last 18 months travelling across this region. Hundreds and hundreds of meetings, from community groups to parish councils to local authority leaders to MPs to large businesses, small businesses, young people, old people. They all want better outcomes for their places and their communities. And I would what we're seeking to do is not just a result of me saying this is the way we're going to do it. It's actually built on the outcome and the output and the content of those conversations, and the recognition that the West Midlands is a complex place, very diverse communities and parts of the region with very, very different needs, but there are a set of views and values, and commitments and principles that will hold us together. But it is only by working together, with a set of a common purpose that we can ever make the inroads into some of those challenges and some of those disadvantages that hold many people in this region back. And that's important because the people in this region that are suffering most are people from the poorest parts of the region and those people living in the poorest communities. And we can't change the prospects of this region or the people in this region unless, as I said before, we address some of those.
Is there a framework or an example that you can think of where a local council has successfully done that?
Well, I think many of them do their best, but the challenge local authorities face is that they've been denuded of resources over the last 10 years, and they are largely, doing their best to stop people in places.
It's trying to keep the doors open.
What we need to do is have and this is, I think, one of the reasons the Royal Mayors were created, is not just being this conduit between regions and Westminster and Whitehall, but it is about joining forces so we can better align priorities region wide. Now, and there are responsibilities for the wider region that the mayor has, that individual council leaders have, and there are issues like, in my view, skills and training and learning, particularly post-16 education, that we are can be far more effectively addressed and aligned to our economic needs by approaching them on a regional level. So I don't think there's necessarily there may be out there some good examples, and there are some local authorities, and this one here in Coventry has done some great work with some of its young and employed people. I know Wolverhampton and Birmingham have done similar. But what is important is that everything I do that impacts the people and places in this region has to be done working in consort with those local authority leaders. And that is something that doesn't happen now either. So, and I took, with my team, we had an away day with all the Labour leaders across the region just before Christmas, and we discussed policy priorities, and I think we've got almost complete alignment on those. But it is also, I would say, equally importantly, about how we'll work together, about those behaviours, how in positions of leadership we'll work together to effect change.
No, that's fair. That's fair. So, moving on to one of the reoccurring themes that was coming through in the questions from our listeners was around your economic forecast for the next year and a half, heading into 2 years. Obviously, right now it's difficult to predict what the next 3 months will look like, right? do you have access to any information, anything you can share with our listeners to kind of either let them know, do they need to rein it in? Is it balls out, go for it? What are we doing on
okay.
it?
So, your listeners might be pleased to know that I don't have I don't have a forecast, and I've not got sort of that an economic team around me currently. So I'm largely dependent on learning and reading and listening to other experts out there. What is we have to get back to growth. We've not had growth for close to 10 years in this country. And some of the most profound challenges we face are simply a function of the fact that we've not had growth. So I'm not saying in the old days, but under Labour governments, we used to get 2.5% a year economic growth. We always thought we should be doing better, but we've had close to 10 years of no growth at all. The compound impact of that, close to probably 30% in total. And the lack of that growth is one of the is driving some of the profound challenges we've got. We have to get back. We have to get back to growth. And I'm really and we need to get back to growth, and we need to get back to a position where people in this region, on the back of that and the opportunities that growth provides, see themselves of having hope about their lives can be better, that their families have a better future here, and the places they live have a better future too. It's only through growth that we do that. I will be working and do my best within this region to deliver that growth, and with the Labour government and the commitment that it's got to a green prosperity plan to of driving housing investment and housing growth, its commitment to investing in skills, I think we can actually turn the corner and get back to a growth trajectory. In terms of sadly, the current OBR forecast and other forecasts over the next 12 months will seem to indicate that, without a change of government, we've got the next 12 months are going to be rather the same for the last 24 or 36 months. And
they seem to be running away from the idea of a May election, don't they?
Well, it's interesting. So, I think all of us in Labour say bring it on, the earlier the better, and I think the people out there would like
most
it.
Of the country's thinking that.
I mean, the Prime Minister made some comments about the election being in the second half of the year. That ultimately, him and some of his close allies and any people can decide. Most of us believe that without any clear sense of direction of travel, without any hope that the Tories have got for the country, he's got a responsibility to have the general election earlier rather than later. We've got an election, a mayoral election on the 2nd of May. I'd be I'd love the Prime Minister to go early, put the elections behind us, and then we can go into the second half of the year with the change that we need. But it's within his gift, and we just have to see what happens. Irrespective of that, we're working. Me and my team are working, full out on the focusing on the election that I've got on the 2nd of May, and we're working relentlessly. And we know that it's only hard work, and the harder we work, the harder turnout we can secure. And if we secure the turnout we need, I'm confident that we can, for the first time in this region,
I think that's the key, isn't it? I think that's a lot of that, and maybe a generational thing. I know a lot of my generation kind of talk a lot about politics now because of where we are in our age group, but I also know a lot of my group of kind of acquaintances and friends don't vote. They just don't, because then they assume that somebody else will do the vote that they want them to do, and that's how we end up with.
And it's a big challenge. And much one of the reasons I went, I did this is because I truly believe democracy matters, and it is through elected office we can change things. Okay. It's a responsibility for people like me and others to prove to people that politics does matter and can make a change. But on doorsteps across the region, I've heard a level of scepticism about politics that is concerning, and the most common view for those people that may have voted for Labour before 2015, backed Brexit, backed Boris Johnson's governments, feel let down by both, and particularly the behaviours of the Conservatives during COVID, and as a consequence, have said you're all the same. We're not going to vote anymore. And I've had people.
That generation also remember the Labour government that came before the current, right? So that's understandable from that perspective. We also have an entire new generation of voters that, during this current government, have become of voting age and are getting their information from different sources and different news sources. And that's shaping kind of their decision-making process, right? So if you're going going door to door, you're never going to speak to many Gen Z. But how are you? I mean, I obviously can't talk for the Labour Party, but how are you trying to reach out and talk to that Gen Z group who are disgruntled, who don't see prospects and actually don't know anything different short of the Tory government?
Yeah. So we'll be building out a social media campaign to reach some of those people. I've got some very bright people from all of our communities across West Midlands helping me on some of that messaging. I'm travelling across the region as much as I can, speaking to as many people as possible, and I will be developing a manifesto that sets out my priorities and the commitment I want to make and will make to young people very, very clearly. And I said a bit about that this morning, and I'll come back to it. We've got to give people hope that their lives can be better, and we've got to address the concerns they have, and the lack of prospects many feel they have. And we can only do that if we can give them access to the tools they need to have choices about what they do, and they can access the skills and the learning, the training they need to succeed in life. And I'll come back to it. That is my number one priority. One of the things I would like to do, once I've gone through the current access talks and we look at the books of the Command Authority, is look at in every way in which we can free up resources to start to invest in young people. And whether that's increase the courses they can access, the opportunities available to them, and help them create route maps that allow them to have a sense of greater purpose and give them access to the opportunities they need to succeed. The
problem is that the carrot on that stick just isn't there anymore, right? It certainly was for my generation. It certainly was for some of the more older Gen Z. But when there's stats and they're hearing things like the average 34-year-old still lives at home with their parents, and the average price of a house is up there, and the average salary is down here, and they live in a region where they're one of the lowest paid people working. Okay, yeah. So you've managed to get me a college that will take me on for a software dev course, and I could, in theory, earn 50 grand a year, 60 grand a year. But what's the point? This is the mentality that we're talking about. What's the point? Why should I commit my time, my energy, my efforts to that, to earn 50 to 60 grand a year to what? Buy a house I'm never going to be able to buy, drive a car that I can't learn to drive. Johnny, it's sort of...
I do. So the other, so the commitment to young people isn't just for us, helping them access to skills. Without that, their prospects for succeeding are limited. Yeah, but we do. Look, Labour have done it nationally. I will make as much of a commitment I can into building more housing and more affordable housing and more suitably rented housing. We've got to find ways in which we can give those people the sense of purpose, the aspiration, motivation to achieve. Some of the things are quite difficult. We probably need a decade of renewal to address some of those things. What we can't afford to do is, in a situation where the region is young as this, to have so many young people feeling that way,
just disengaged,
and becoming disengaged.
Completely,
And I put an old-fashioned approach to this. I think work is a good thing. I think we're social beings, social animals. It can be, if you're in the right work and enjoying it, it's fantastic for self-esteem and self-belief and confidence. And it is truly the best way in which you can make the most of your life. Doing a job that is well paid, you find personally rewarding, and gives you the opportunity to make choices about what you do. And that is my primary objective. I cannot do that alone. I've got to work with all those progressive people, institutions, and forces in the region to turn the dial on this. And it is and it's become the biggest responsibility that falls on me. And the only way to do it is working collectively to address some of those concerns. And that's why, when there have been announcements about the current mayor has made announcements about 1,000 fintech jobs in the region, or 1,000 civil servant jobs being created, I've said every job is welcome, but how many of those jobs are going to be available to young people living, learning, um, um, or being schooled in this region today? And I've never get an answer to those questions. So not only do we need to put the investment in, we've got to ensure that when those jobs are being created here, they are, as far as possible, being filled by people and young people from this region.
And an achievable prospect for people living here, right?
Indeed,
but
yeah.
Do you agree that trust is going to play a big part of kind of the challenges that Labour faces for the next sort of if we were to fast forward, there's a general election called, all things go in the way that kind of you hope they will, and Labour are in. Trust, how important and how pivotal do you think that's going to be in rebuilding of that trust?
It is pivotal, and it's when I speak to those voters, and admittedly some of them older voters, they're they become cynical about politics because they've stopped trusting politicians. And now I'm not a politician, so so I hope I start off being perceived slightly differently. But trust is important, and but trust is, how do you build trust? You build trust by having honest, open conversations about the world as it is and what you want to do with it, without fabrication, about making lots of promises, or the Boris Johnson boosterism about telling people tales about what's going to be like and it's never going to be like. So we need to get back to some a full, resilient, robust discourse about
But fundamentally, trust is built over time, right? And through a demonstration of deliverable behaviour and deliverable promises.
It is, but you start off with you have to start with a recognition of where you are now. If you fail to have a proper assessment about where we are now, you can never do that, because then it is about how we build the route map to get to where we want to go to. So the work I'm doing, and this is where I hope that my approach to building trust is being really clear about and open and honest about the challenges we face today. People feel it every day. They're feeling worse off, not better off. They see advantages for their children reducing, not increasing, and they see any elderly people they're responsible for the quality of their lives getting worse, not better. We saw honest conversations about where we are now, and we set some deliverable targets about where we want to get to. And the work I'm doing around the region, and the bit about trust, is I'm working with people across our communities, with some of the key institutions, organisations that have other responsibilities, to build out that route map and that plan of delivery that gets us there. That is the only way to do it now. And we have honest conversations about that journey, about what needs to be done to get there, and we talk openly and honestly about the challenges we face, without coming up with spurious reasons about why things haven't been done or delivered. And delivery, and you're quite right. Ultimate, that trust is around those people elected to lead and empower, delivering on their promises, and that is what I know in my position I have to do, and I'm absolutely committed to. And what I recognise though is if I'm going to deliver on those promises, I need the key people who lead our communities and some of the large organisations that invest lots of money here, working to a very similar agenda, because we need all these forces for good, progressive forces working together to achieve those aims. If we can do that, we can make a big difference to people in this place.
Yeah, no, understood. No, well, that's fair. Any closing comments? Anything you'd like our listeners to be aware of? Things that you want to kind of cover off that we haven't necessarily covered off?
Well, firstly, thank you for inviting me, and it's been really enjoyed the discussion, the conversation. There's some very, very good questions, and many of them are quite complicated to answer at this point. But hopefully, I've given a sense of my priorities. The bit I would reiterate in terms of the challenges we face in the West Midlands is that very few people in this region see themselves as coming from the West Midlands. So we need to give this place electorally some identity. If you ask people on the doorstep where they come from, they'll say the city, the town, the borough, the place. Yeah. They'll say UK, Great Britain, probably Europe and the Northern Hemisphere before they say the West Midlands. So this part of my project is about how we can give this region a greater sense of purpose than it is now. And we have a current mayor who is seen and perceived to be far too Birmingham centric. So one of the things I'm doing is not only ensuring that my key policies have a relevance across the whole region, but I also recognise those differences. And it's why one of my first commitments, even before I got into policy, was saying that I want a base in Coventry and a base in the Black Country. So I want to be a mayor who is accessible, visible and accountable across the whole region. And I truly want to spend as little time behind the desk as possible, and to be out there meeting people, addressing concerns. And my responsibility is to put a great team in place in my office who will help with the follow through and the delivery on the ground. So no, thank you for inviting me. I've really enjoyed the discussions. Great set of questions. And
thank you for giving up your time. Really do appreciate that.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, this has been good. I will forward you across any of the sort of follow-up comments and questions that come through. Best of luck for the elections in May. I mean, it sounds like you've got the right sort of campaign going. So if there's anything we can do to support, do let us know.
Fingers crossed. No, thanks very much, and really enjoyed it.
Brilliant.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys, for listening to another episode of RecTalk.
Okay, thank you.
Look at that. That's good.
That was really good. Yeah.
Oh, good. No,
thank you.
That was just stretching.
Yeah, no. It's good. I think it seems quite chatty, didn't it?
Yeah, it went very well, I think.